Okay, hi everybody. My name is Becky Gimple. I am the immediate past president of the Zonta Club of Burbank area and the 2020-2022 Zonta International District 9 Public Relations and Communications Chair. So thank you everybody for joining us today. This is a workshop on public relations and communications. Can everybody see the PowerPoint? Okay. Perfect.
Yes.
So what I wanted to, let me put it from beginning. There we go. So what I wanted to start off with is what public relations and communications is. So I've heard from people that it's actually a pretty confusing concept, and it took me a while, and I have a master's degree in public relations, and it really wasn't until probably halfway through my master's degree program that I really got a good grasp on what PR is. But to really just make it simple, public relations is just getting your message out to people. That can be internally, that can be externally, that can be in a government setting, in a nonprofit setting, in a corporate setting. It's really just making sure that people know what you're trying to say. And the way that public relations differs from something like marketing is that you're really going to go about it in ways that don't cost money. Now, if you have like a PR consulting firm or something, obviously that costs money. But what I mean is that whereas advertising, you might have to, pay money to a TV station or in a newspaper, public relations is what are you doing in a way that is more organic and natural to get your message out there. So as we go on, just sort of think of it that way, that we're looking at the PR aspect, not a marketing, not an advertising, just overall PR. And for the purposes of this, public relations and communications, kind of the same thing. There are some people who will argue that they're very different, but just for the purposes of today, basically the same thing. Okay. The important thing that I want to sort of get here today is that there's differences between the external versus the internal messaging. Regardless, the whole point of PR is to get your message out there, whether that's to the community, whether that is to prospective members, or whether that's to your own club members. And I think that sometimes we can forget that PR internally is also important, because if the people within your club don't know about what's going on, that's a big problem. We need to make sure that people both within our club and outside of our club know what's going on, know what our message is. So the way we do this is to find the tools that work best for our audience. So, if you're looking to get a 14-year-old to know about Zonta, you're probably not going to put an article in your local print newspaper because they're never going to see that. On the flip side, if you're looking to get a 65-year-old person to know about Zonta, you're probably not going to put your message out on TikTok because, again, that's not how it works. So you have to think about the tools that work best for your target audience. So one thing that I put Facebook groups versus Facebook pages here as an example. So a lot of us know Facebook. And a lot of us can get confused about two tools that we use. One is a Facebook group and one is a Facebook page. A Facebook group is a private page where you can get information out. That's what you would maybe use for a club. So let's say that all your club members are on Facebook, which I know is not necessarily the case in many clubs, but just for the sake of argument. A Facebook group would be a great way to get your messaging out for a club because it's a private place. You can't see what's going on in the group usually unless you're in it. And then those people can get messaged about what's going on. On the flip side, you're not going to want to use a Facebook group if you're trying to let the community at large know about your club. For that, you're going to want to use a Facebook page because that's external facing. And so your messaging is going to be different between your Facebook group and your Facebook page. Your Facebook group might be more casual. It might just be like, hey, don't forget, we have a meeting at Stacy's house on Friday night. Everyone's going to know what that means because they all know who Stacy is. They all know what the meeting is. You don't have to go into detail. Obvious. If you put that on an external page, people are going to be very confused and it's not going to make sense. So it's really thinking, what are the tools I'm using and what's going to work best for this specific instance. And the biggest thing is to just get yourself out there. So that's sort of something I'm going to repeat a lot, is just get the message out there, whether that's multiple ways or whether that's one way. So, okay. So I wanted to go through a couple tools from Zonta International. And this is where I'm going to take the slide share off. Okay, can you all see my Windows screen here? Okay, so the first one I wanted to start with is the Zonta Connect app. Now this is going to be an internal PR tool, and this has just been newly launched. So if you haven't downloaded this app, I recommend you do so. So as you can see here, this is the Zonta Connect app. It's going to have a feed, discussion, all sorts of fun stuff. This is a perfect internal tool, and what ZI has been trying to use to get members internationally to understand, what's going on. This is it. So a member directory with instant private and group chats, calendar, member resources. So this is the sort of thing that's an internal public relations tool. This would be good for clubs who, say, are trying to find members in other clubs, are trying to learn more about what's going on, stuff like that. Another thing that I think is really great that ZI does is how we have our individual pages here. So now, one thing I just wanted to make sure people realized is that in the app, there are special interest groups that you have to opt into. These are unchecked automatically. So in order to opt in, you do have to check these and then save. So something that I think people should make sure to do is check your settings on your ZI profile and make sure that you're opted in to what you want to opt into. So for instance, do you want to be excluded from the online member directory? If you're excluded, that means that people from other clubs don't know you, won't be able to find you. Do not mail list, then you're not going to get any of ZI's stuff. So if you want to, get information from ZI, you got to make sure that you are opting in to all of these things. And for those of you who don't know, this is, make sure you log into ZI, My Zonta, and then it's going to be your settings under your profile. Okay. Another thing that I think people don't always know that's super great is there is a separate website from zonta.org that is Zonta Says No. This page is completely dedicated to the Zonta Says No to Violence Against Women campaign, but they have their own public relations tools. So this is especially great when your club is going through 16 days of activism, maybe Denim Day, anything where the Zonta Says No, where we're promoting stopping violence against women. So the thing is that ZI has a lot of stuff to make your job for PR so much easier. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, which is really great. You don't have to come up with your own images. It's all there for you. So for instance, if we look here at the PR tools, best practices, great. Share your story, 5 tips to capture your campaign. Press release, Zonta Says No logo, social media images, Facebook profile photo frame, infographics. So there's all sorts of stuff here. So for instance, if your club has a Facebook page, you could put up these social media images. You can put up infographics. Your own personal Facebook profile, you can add the photo frame that's going to have something like, Becky Gimple says no to violence against women. These are all things that just make it so much easier for your club to get its information out there. So here, it's going to take you to a Dropbox. And there you go. Look, for immediate release, this is their default, which is why, you're going to have to make some changes because as you can see, the logo says Zonta Club of Any Town. So you're going to have to replace that with your own logo. But it gives you already a press release that you could send to your local paper about what 16 days is. It tells you where, insert general club information, insert quote. This just makes it really easy. And, I learned how to make a press release in grad school. Not everyone knows how to make a press release. So it's good to just have this template here that you don't have to reinvent the wheel, which I really like. So I just want people to be aware of what resources are out there to make PR as easy as possible. And then this is under infographics. So look, 10 myths about child marriage. You could just put that on a Facebook page, on an Instagram page. It's going to do your job for you, which is really great. Okay. Another thing that I wanted to just make sure people know is the Zonta International USA Caucus website, which again is a separate website from ZI or Zonta Says No. This is on the zontausa.org. Now, this is where you can take action. I have this under PR because really this is what advocacy is public relations. You know, advocacy is trying to get your message out there to government officials to elect change. So here you can sign up with the Zonta Action Center, and it makes it super easy to do just advocacy. So one of the things they do is Fast Friday. So if you sign up, it'll let you know what this week's, advocacy campaign is. You can sign up for alerts here, put your email and your zip code, and then it's going to tell you all these different things, and it makes it so easy for you. So what you do is you click on one, you put in your info, and it's going to tailor it to your specific elected officials. So, mine is going to come up with Glendale, California, and it's going to look at my Glendale local officials, including state, town, such. And this is just an easy way. So this one is provide survivors of domestic violence with financial stability. Done. That takes you about 5 seconds on a Friday morning, and you're engaging in advocacy public relations. It's just so easy. So I really love that. I love that ZI gives us these tools to do that, because just literally before you even roll out of bed in the morning, you could do this and be like, I just did some activism public relations. Done. Perfect. Okay. Something else that I wanted to bring to your attention is that on the zonta.org website, there are so many PR tools. So similar to the Zonta Says No PR tools page, zonta.org has its own set of PR tools. So we got a Welcome to Zonta booklet, good for new members. We have brand identity guidelines, which is going to tell you what fonts you should use in, official publication, colors, photography examples, tips, PowerPoint templates. The template I'm using here is a template that I got from zonta.org. Ooh, my internet connection is unstable. Okay, if anything happens, just tell me, but hopefully that won't be an issue. Okay. We got some webinars, and then club area and district logos. So all this stuff, super important, super easy. And then if you see here, go to a resource library. The resource library continues to have information here. Membership materials, stuff for Z and Golden Z. And I also like to point this out because some people don't know, this is where you get the fun Zoom backgrounds. Virtual backgrounds. It's under resource library. So the one I have here, I added my voice. That is the Add Your Voice to Zoom background. It just has the little bubble here. So, okay. Speaking of Add Your Voice, basically every campaign that Zonta does, they release a PR tools kit, which is amazing. So here is the membership campaign for Add Your Voice. As those of you probably know, April to June, it was a membership campaign with different tiers. If you look here, 2022 membership campaign toolkit had social media tools, ideas, timeline, campaign leaderboard. We have flyers, we have PowerPoints, we have social media icons, we have ideas. ZI really gives so much information that it's just it's so easy to do. Okay, I'm gonna bring this back. All right, so I think I covered everything on this page. Zonta app, PR, fast action, international tools, yep. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to here from current slide. So one of the main things of PR is how we promote Zonta, both within our community and internationally. A lot of our clubs have websites. Good thing about websites is that you don't have to do X's and O's. We have advanced, and there are things that make it super easy to do websites. Some of those are WordPress and Wix. If your club does not have a website already, really you can just take a look at those. Sometimes if you want to add extra things, it might cost money, but there are ways to make it for free. You know, if you don't want to buy the domain name, say for us, santaburbank.org, if you just leave in the .wordpress, it's usually going to be free, which is really nice. Not that your club shouldn't use extra funds to, you know, make a nice sleek URL, but if funds are an issue, this is a really great way to sort of go down on that. The way that these websites work is just really, it's really foolproof. Just, you know, you're gonna pick your font, pick your colors, and there are usually templates available. You can just take a template that already exists and just make it your own. Something that I like to do is that I like to take the brand guidelines on ZI, get the official colors from Zonta, they'll give you the numbers, and then you can just make sure that the colors exactly match your website, and boom, it looks really Zonta-y because you got that maroon color and it's perfect. So another way that we get our message out there is social media. Social media is huge, you know, for all ages, but different ages are in different social media, and different social media platforms have different purposes. I've found that Facebook is really effective for volunteer groups because there's a lot of different things you can do there. People can follow a Facebook page really easily to get information without having to be invested as a group. So for instance, even though I'm not in other service clubs besides Zonta, I like to see what's going on. So I follow Kiwanis, I follow Rotary, I follow Seroptimist in my town. And that way, you know, they know I'm not a member. Following doesn't mean that I'm a member, but I get to know like, oh, hey, okay, Seroptimist is having an event this Sunday. And that's really good because if you are planning an event this Sunday, you can make sure, hey, our event in Zonta is not gonna conflict with Seroptimist events on the same day. It's a good way to just really figure out what's going on. Facebook also lets you create events, which can be good if you have a big event. I would not recommend using Facebook events for small things like club meetings because it can get unwieldy. A Facebook event is going to be good for your couple times a year event that you're really just trying to get information out there. And I wouldn't necessarily use the RSVP system on Facebook as, you know, tried and true of who's coming, because a lot of people will just, you know, put I'm interested or I'm going and not. So, but that's just a good way to get a general idea and get your message out there. And then you're going to want to, you know, get your actual RSVP system another way. So Instagram is an interesting one. It's really popular. The thing with Instagram is that it's becoming very sophisticated, I'd say, with reels, with videos, and that the sort of original purpose of Instagram with just static photos is no longer what Instagram is doing. Instagram has also been changing their algorithms a lot so that, you know, specific people come up more than others. So while I'd say it's good to perhaps have an Instagram account, I wouldn't put too much of an emphasis on there. Instagram might be best for just a place to put some of your photos from events, you know, put flyers for upcoming events, maybe group shots of people at meetings, more a good place to just show like, hey, this is what our Zonta Club is doing. But there are people who, you know, there are many people who Instagram for a living, who are posting on Instagram dozens of times a day. And so it's really, you know, we're never going to keep up with that. That's not what's going to happen. So unless you have someone that is just on their phone 24/7 taking pictures, you know, Instagram's not going to really work for you. And if your club doesn't have an Instagram account, I think that's okay. I don't think that Instagram is necessarily the best avenue for Zonta clubs. So this is one of those things where I'd say, take it or leave it. You know, it depends on what's up for you. But I would say that within Instagram, it's almost better to not have one than to say have an old one where all your pictures are from 2019. You know, you'd rather have something current and just maybe then make your strategy. You don't have to post on Instagram a lot, but let's say you decide we're going to post something every 2 weeks. As long as it's regular and that people can see like, okay, they post something about every 2 weeks, that's good because they're seeing updated content and they know that you're still active. The thing that makes people worried is that if they see a page that hasn't been updated in a really long time, they're going to assume that maybe you don't exist anymore. You know, I was doing some searching actually just yesterday. I was curious about the Masonic Lounge in my town. I found their website and I went to their events page, and all the events were from 2014. Now, I know that they still exist, but their website having all their events from 2014 and nothing recently really doesn't give a good first impression. So for something like that, I would say take your events page off altogether. Don't put any dates on it. And then that way, you know, I don't know that you haven't updated your website since 2014. You know, it's, if you're not going to be able to update regularly, which is fine, just don't make it not so obvious, you know, make it so that people don't know you can't update regularly. And then that's fine. Have more information that's going to be more evergreen, stuff about your club that's not going to change very often. Okay, Twitter is a tough one. I'd say, again, take it or leave it. For Twitter, you know, I use Twitter a lot as like a news information place. I don't personally post a lot on Twitter, but I will read Twitter very often to know what's going on. So again, that's something where people might not be coming to Twitter to look for your message. LinkedIn, I think, is an interesting one, and I actually do think that people should be using LinkedIn more often. And here's why. Zonta is a professional women's organization, and LinkedIn is a professional social networking site. So LinkedIn actually makes sense because young women who are professional, whether that's from 20s to 50s, who are, you know, actively searching for jobs, actively searching for contacts in the professional world, they're going to be on LinkedIn, and having a page for your Zonta Club actually makes sense in that area because they're going to be looking for networking. They're going to be looking for connections. So that makes sense. And the good thing about LinkedIn is that you can put it on your page. So let's show you what I mean here. Should have brought this one up earlier. But now I am going to be the first to say that I have severely neglected my club's LinkedIn page. Sorry, but you know, so what I think is good about LinkedIn is that if you have a personal LinkedIn page, you're able to showcase your Zonta Club on there. So here's let's get to my LinkedIn page. Okay, so now of course my LinkedIn is first going to have my actual job information because that's what LinkedIn is. But if you look down here, volunteering, this is where you put your Zonta. So for me, this is my personal Becky Gimple page. But I have, because our club has a page, when I type this in here, it's going to show up with the pretty picture. If it didn't, this would not show up here. In fact, I'm in this organization, which is my local library fundraising board, and I made a LinkedIn page for us just so that I could get the cute icon on here, because before, nothing showed up. And that's not pretty. So here, people, if they come to my page, they're able to see, okay, what am I doing outside of my 9-to-5 job? And that's that I'm in Zonta. This here is what I've written personally. So I put in my Zonta Club's mission. I put in, you know, what my role is. And I've also put in all my past positions so that people know, okay, what else have I done? And this is where I put my district stuff. You could, if we had a district LinkedIn page, you could put all sorts of stuff there. But on the Zonta thing here, so this is the Zonta page. We are able to get people to follow us. We post very sporadically. You can see here, I posted September 2021 and then not again until June 1st of 2022. That was a mistake on my part. I should have been at least once a month posting on our LinkedIn page. And it can be super simple. It can just be, you know, for instance, Zonta International has their own LinkedIn page, and it's super easy to just share stuff. So Zonta International posted about International Literacy Day. You can just share that. A lot of times posting on social media can just be as simple as sharing what Zonta International has posted, because they have people who work there, you know, full time and are paid to do it. So they're the ones creating this great content. So you can just share what they have posted. So I would recommend LinkedIn for that reason. You know, it is hard to maintain many different social media presences, but if I had to choose two, I would say Facebook and LinkedIn over Instagram and Twitter. Someone else you talk to could have a totally different opinion. So know that this is not, gospel. This is not 100% fact. This is just me saying that that's what I think for our demographics and who we're looking for. That's what I think works best because a lot of women, I'd say especially women who are early in their career, 20s and 30s, who, maybe they've just gotten their career down, they're looking to connect with other like-minded women. They're going to be looking on LinkedIn and they're going to say like, oh, hey, like, I'm looking for maybe a new job. I'm looking for clients, depending on what it is. And this is a great way for them to figure out, what are other business women who work in any profession, what are they doing in my community? This is a great place to go. So, okay. And then the last one, I just wanted to include TikTok because I think it's really funny. I have never used TikTok in my entire life because even though I am on the younger spectrum of the Zonta age, I am still too old for TikTok. It is one of those things where social media platforms come and go. People who are 18, 19, probably not using Facebook at all anymore, and they're on TikTok. I would say if your club's goal is to get young professionals or, you're looking at your Z clubs in your high school, you're probably going to want to get on TikTok. But you're probably going to want to get a Gen Zer who knows how to do TikTok, because if my club asked me to make a TikTok, I'd be searching from scratch. I have no idea. So I think what's important too is to get someone who's familiar with that audience, because it's really clear if you go on TikTok and just, start posting what you think, you're not going to see it because that's not, TikTok, it's about dances and stuff. I don't know. It's a very strange platform. I don't know the new generation. But if you had a Z club and you're looking to expand, you could go to your 16-year-old Z club president and say, hey, should our club should you guys make a TikTok? Is that something that you want to do? But then let them take the reins. Let them make the TikTok. They're going to know what's best to get people their own age. Don't try to make a TikTok for another audience. It's just not going to work. So that's me saying, I don't know TikTok. If you have questions on TikTok, don't come to me. I have no idea. So the next thing I want to talk about is message boards and connection sites. I love these because this is really where people are looking. You want to find people where they're at. Facebook, there's a lot of stuff going on Facebook, and there are going to be people who, no matter how many times you tell them what Zonta is, they're not going to want to join because that's not their thing, and that's fine. That's why there's so many different things in the world so that people can find what works for them. But on message boards and connection sites, those are people who are actively looking for things like Zonta. So let's start with Nextdoor. A lot of you guys know what Nextdoor is. Now, this depends on your communities. Some communities might have a really active Nextdoor presence, some might not. So you also have to keep in mind, what does this look like where I am? Nextdoor might be really great for you. It might not. So you're going to have to figure that out on your own by looking on Nextdoor, seeing, are people posting? What is the age range of people posting? What types of thing are they posting? If people are just posting about like lost cats, then this might not, be the right place for you. But if people are really engaged, Nextdoor is a great place to say, hey neighbors, we have this awesome club. Here's what we're doing. You might want to start with just events so that you're not, going too out there with like, hey, join us. You might just start with like, hey, we got something going on here. We're having a clothing drive. We're having a gala. We want people from the community. Nextdoor is going to be good for that. Reddit is interesting. I'm not 100% advocating for it. I did want to put that out there. Reddit goes by categories of sub message boards. So where I'm thinking about with Reddit is that, like Nextdoor, there are cities that have their own Reddit pages. So for instance, I follow the Glendale, the Burbank, and the Los Angeles Reddit pages. And these are where people are posting geographically about their stuff. So this is going to be similar to like a Nextdoor. And again, it's going to depend, are people in your city or neighborhood actually on Reddit? If they're not, then again, that's not going to work for you. For me, Glendale is actually a pretty active Reddit page that tell you what's going on. People will post about things. So that would be a good place to say like, hey, Glendale, did you know that we have this Santa Club nearby in Burbank? Post different events, post stuff like that. So it's a good thing to check out. And again, it might not work, but you could check it out. And if worse comes to worse, you might know more about what's going on in your community, which I always think is fun. And then the last two, I think, are the best for these scenarios, in which Christy, Britt, and I did a presentation a couple years back, and we focused on some of these. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but volunteer match, probably the best of all of these. And that's because people who are looking on volunteer match are actively looking for volunteer opportunities. So you're literally providing the service that these people want. Whereas, on a Nextdoor or on a Reddit, people might just be looking for the local garage sales and not care about Santa. On volunteer match, that's what they want. These are either people who are organizations posting looking for volunteers, or volunteers who are looking. Now, volunteer match, there are some fees associated for organizations, which is why, you're going to have to look at your club, do your club finances, budgets, figure out if this is good for you. I would say before you spend any money, take a look at volunteer match and look at stuff in your area and see what's going on to, again, determine if that's right for you. So what I would do is, if you make a profile as a person, not as an organization, that's going to be free. So I would make a profile as a person and look at what kind of volunteer opportunities are posted in your area. If there's a lot, there are different kinds, then that might be a good match for you because people are going. You're also going to want to see, are people liking the volunteer opportunities near you? Are they posting different events? You're going to want to see how active it is. In a Los Angeles area, volunteer match is going to be a lot more active than it might be in a rural area, because in a more rural area, people just might know organically what's going on. It depends on the community. But the good thing about that one is you're really selecting your audience more strategically. These are people who are saying, I want a volunteer opportunity. How do I get a volunteer opportunity? And then you get to say, oh, hey, I have a volunteer opportunity for you. So that's what's really good. And I recommend for stuff like that, not just like, hey, you can join Zonta, but specific volunteer opportunities, because a lot of times that's what these people are looking for, is sort of a one and done. And then that's how you kind of get them into the fold. So if you have a gala, you have a clothing drive, put out a volunteer match for maybe like, we need 2 volunteers to just help us the day of. That's how you get them to come. You talk to them about Zonta, and you sort of roll that into membership. You don't want to just kind of glom onto them and say, join our club, because, they might not get them to understand what's going on. Meetup is a little bit similar to volunteer match, but it's more broad. And I've found that Meetup tends to, be about people who maybe are just into making friends. You'll see a lot of stuff like people who want to go hiking, people who want to do this. So again, depends on your area. Could be good if you're just putting out on Meetup, like, hey, we're having a social on X day at X time. You want to come? We're open to all. I wouldn't put like a specific business meeting on there, because people might be confused, like, what is this business meeting? What am I coming to? But if it's more of a social or an event, that could be a good place to sort of put on there and be like, hey, come see what we're about. Okay. Next thing I want to talk about is newsletters and mailing lists. Now, a lot of you probably know about these tools, but I just want to sort of reiterate them because they are good for public relations. If you're just emailing your prospective members in your community from an Excel spreadsheet, please don't. So what you want to do is make sure that you have your people in some sort of format. My club uses Constant Contact. I have experience with MailChimp. I'm sure there are others out there that I haven't listed, but this is really great because you're able to have all of your audience right there, where you don't have to think, oh crap, did I remember to include this person? And you can use these things as small as a club level. If you wanted to use a Constant Contact or a MailChimp to email your members about business meetings, to the entire community. You can make different segments in these things. You can say, okay, this is a group of our club members. this is a group of the community, etc. So that's how our club does it. We have one group that's all of our club members. And then we have one group that's the greater community. And that's going to include, people who are interested, events, different businesses, so that when we have a Luna Fest, we put it out to our constant contact list and say like, hey, you want to come to our Luna Fest? And that's just, it's a good way not to lose people. People can sign up on their own if you give them that information. And it's a good way to keep people involved. I would say you do not want to send newsletters to the greater community too frequently, because you're really going to turn people off and they're going to unsubscribe. And once someone unsubscribes, you can't resubscribe them, basically, because it just won't allow you to. So, and they'll have to do it themselves. So I would stick to either, no more than once a month, maybe just by event, maybe just a couple times a year. We'll usually just do stuff for what we have an event. So let's say we have Luna Fest. Well, we might do it a couple times within a month, but it's just for that targeted event. It's not just on a, if you're emailing every week, people in the community, they're probably going to get a little bit annoyed, especially if you don't have new information to share. You can't just constantly saying like, hey, we're here, we exist. Like, be like, okay, I know, I get it. And if they're on their mailing list, they already know about you. So you don't want to annoy them. And then the last thing is press releases. This is something that I also think really depends on your community and whether people do you even have a local print newspaper anymore? A lot of them, kind of went bust during the pandemic. So if you no longer have a local newspaper, this could totally be a moot point for you. But if you do, this could be a great place to put a press release about your upcoming events, when there are awards, if you're members, just to get information out there. Our, incoming Lieutenant Governor Gloria Salas of my club, we had, she was honored a couple months ago, and there were a lot of write-ups in the newspaper about it. We got several new members recently who found out about us. They'd never heard of Santa, but they saw the write-up about Gloria in the Burbank Leader, which is the local Burbank newspaper. And they said, hey, I was reading this thing about Gloria, and it was talking all about how she's in this organization, Santa, and I've never heard of this club before. And I got us 2 or 3 new members, just that. So, again, if you're specifically looking for high schoolers for your Z Club, maybe not the place to go. But you got to think about what is your goal for this, and then tailor it accordingly. And a lot of times a press release could really work for your goal. And as you saw, we have the template, so you can make that really easy to tailor that. Especially something like 16 days, where you saw we have that 16 days template. That's a super easy thing to just replace with your club's information and just put that out there. So I recommend that. Okay, so now we're going to talk about some tricks and tools. So one thing I really recommend when posting on social media is that you can post ahead of time and post on multiple platforms simultaneously. There's a few ways that you can do this. In Facebook, they have something called the Facebook Meta Business Suite. And you are able to link, if you have an Instagram as well, your Facebook page and your Instagram. You go in, you can do things ahead of time. It's great. You're not going to be able to do every single thing on every single one of these platforms. So you're going to want to figure out what works best for you. Like if you don't have an Instagram, might not be as needed, but it still allows you to post ahead of time. So something like this, I find really helpful for something like 16 days, or if, I know I'm going to have a busy work day and I need to post beforehand, or I'm like, oh, I'm going to totally forget to post about Denim Day this week. You can make that ahead of time. So you're not like, okay, I need to make sure I post on Sunday. And I find that really helpful. And then outside of Facebook, there are platforms that do this for you. So you have Hootsuite and Buffer. I do not pay for either of these. And these are things where if you want more features, you will need to pay. So for instance, Hootsuite is free for 3 social media platforms. So I use this for my club for Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. If I wanted to hook up a 4th one, I would have to pay, and I don't want to do that. So I leave it to 3. And the same with these is they will usually, for free members, you can only post so many posts ahead of time before you have to pay. So for 16 days, I think I usually have to do like 3 days at a time because I'm posting on all 3, and then you reach your limit, and then you gotta wait, and then you gotta do the 3 days. If your club has the budget and you pay for the, this premium subscription, you're gonna have a lot more. But I know we're all volunteer orgs and we might not have those kinds of funds. So I like to, talk about what's free versus what you can upgrade for. So what I do, because I'm especially lazy, is that I knew that I was doing the PR for both my club and the district. And I didn't want to sign in and sign out of Hootsuite, which is my preferred platform, to do both. So I use Hootsuite for my club and I use Buffer for the district because they are very similar. And that way I can just click on both, don't have to sign in, sign out, remember what my password is, and go for there. Buffer is also similar, same thing, schedule posts, you're good to go. I never remember passwords. It's really terrible, which is why I like to just have things signed in on my computer so I can just click on Buffer and I don't have to sign in and I just go, okay, let's post on the district Facebook page, do. So I would recommend looking through those sorts of things. These are tricks and tools you don't have to use. It's just something that personally makes my life easier. I work 9 to 5. So if I know I need to post something on a Monday and it's Sunday, I'm gonna do it the day before and have it lined up so that I don't have to worry about it while I'm at work on Monday. So another trick and tool, the website Canva. Canva is an amazing website that I am absolutely obsessed with. We're gonna go there for a second. Canva, like some of these other ones, there is a free version and there is a paid version. I don't like paying for things, so I use the free version. The free version does mean that there are going to be images that you won't be able to access on the paid version. So if that is a deal breaker for you, pay for the paid version. Come on, continue with email. I'm on my work computer, which is why my passwords are not loading automatically. And so it's a thing here. So, okay, it's not gonna let me log in. But, so this is Canva. Canva has automatic template and designs. So let's say you want to make a pretty social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, yours. Basically, you can figure out what you're looking for and they're going to have templates and you just, as you see, create a design, get inspired by their templates. It's able to really take a lot of the guesswork out and then you can just sort of replace your images and your text with what you want. It's a really great way to make something look really professional and eye-catching without having to do a whole lot of work because they're doing that work for you. So I really recommend Canva for everything from invitations to events, to Facebook pages, to, at the end of the year, if you have some photos from your club, put them on a nice little holiday Facebook post, stuff like that. So Canva really just about every kind of design you could want. It's a great tool. All right, we were here. And then one other thing I wanted to discuss, I want to remind people that not all images are free to use. Now, it's very unlikely that people are going to sue your club for using an image that does not belong to you, but there's no reason to take that chance. So if you are looking for an image that you do not have the rights to, it's really good to use freely usable images. So I have two website recommendations here. The first is Unsplash. The second is Pixabay. And this is where you're going to search for stock images that are free to use, because there have been, there's always times where people are going to take an image from the internet. They just went to Google Images, they found this image, they put it on their brochure, and we're not legally free to use that image. Now, yes, if it is an invite to 12 people, it is very likely no one is going to know that you stole that image. But technically, it's not yours. And we don't want to put Zonta in the position where people are like, oh yeah, Zonta, that organization that steals other people's images. It's not a good look. So as much as you can, either use photos that someone in your club has taken that you know you have the rights to, or get something from an Unsplash, a Pixabay. You can even Google, free stock images if you want. But I find this to be easier because for certain, like, okay, these are images that I am okay to use and that are not someone else's property. So just a good thing to know. And some people just don't realize that just because it's on the internet does not mean that it is free to use. It's easy to take. You can screenshot it and steal it, but it is technically stealing. So let's not do that because we don't like stealing. So those are those websites to use royalty-free images. And then something I wanted to discuss here is video conferencing. Obviously, this is something that during the pandemic, we have gotten, really needed to get used to. And there are a lot of video conferencing platforms. There's Zoom, there's WebEx, there's GoToMeeting, there's Microsoft Teams, there's Google Meet and Hangouts, there's Skype, there's a ton. And you don't need to use all of them, but you should know that some are going to work better for your preferences than others. Some you're going to have to pay for some things. Some you're not going to have to pay for. And so it really depends on what you need and what you're going to. So this is a Zoom meeting. There is a way that if you wanted it where it's just me speaking and you can't see anybody else, you would use something called Zoom Webinar. That's going to be good if you're doing a presentation to like 200 people. And if people are unmuted, it's going to be a whole disaster. We really do that in sort of our smaller Zonta district because, we're not a big audience here, so it's okay. And we get to see each other and that's great. But it's good to know that if you were doing an event in your community that was a webinar and you were expecting 150 people, you're going to want to make sure that you have it in a way that works best. And just doing a normal Zoom meeting is probably not going to be the best for that instance. Now, a lot of these platforms do have different webinars. So GoToMeeting, has like GoToWebinar. So a lot of these work very similarly, but you're also going to want to do what people are most familiar with. And I think at this point in the pandemic, we've realized people like Zoom. My job uses WebEx, and I got to go back and forth between Zoom and WebEx. I know for a while the district used GoToMeeting, so we did a lot of GoToMeetings there. My job also used Microsoft Teams. But I would say you want what people are familiar with, which in this case is primarily Zoom. And that's just to make it easier on your audience, that they're not saying like, what's WebEx? And then they're having to download a WebEx thing. They're having to figure that out. So, know your population, know what people are most likely to use, and make it easiest for them. And then there are different aspects of these things that you can use. So for today, you had to register, and then you were emailed automatically the Zoom link. That's not how it always is. I had to put that in there when I created this thing. I did that so I knew how many people were coming, and I was able to then email you yesterday to say, hey, reminder, this is coming up. You can't do that automatically with just a Zoom meeting. So you have to make sure like, okay, for this meeting, do I want to have a registration open? If we wanted to, we could have a poll here. We could do breakout rooms. There are different, there are different things, and you should just figure out what works best for your video conferencing and use that. Don't just assume you have to do a normal Zoom meeting. You can make it work best for you and what kind of information you're putting out there. Okay, so biggest takeaways. Don't overexert yourself. Zonta is a volunteer organization. Many people have 9-to-5 jobs or families or grandkids or other things. We are not full-time social media influencers who are doing this for a living. So do not stress about your social media and PR presence. This is something that you're doing to aid your club, but if it's coming at the expense that you are being stressed out about posting, then it's not working. Don't overexert yourself. Know you're doing the best you can, delegate, and if having 5 social media channels is too much for you, pick 1 or 2 and just focus on those. There's no reason to have yourself be everywhere if it's just too much for you. The second thing is that having nothing is better than being out of date, like I was talking about with the website. If you have a Facebook page that hasn't been posted on since 2018, delete it. It's not, it just looks bad, you know? And you don't have to post regularly. You can be posting just once a month, once every other month, but you need to make sure that when people go on your Facebook page, they're seeing that there's some sort of regularity. Not every day, but that there's some kind of regularity. And if they're going to there are Zonta websites that I've been to where, again, hasn't been updated in years. And that's not a good look. So if you can update your website regularly, which is hard, it can cost money, it requires man hours, make sure that you're taking things off that date your website. So if you can't post regularly, don't have a news page, don't have an events page, just have static evergreen information that someone can look up and then find out more another way. Because if people are going and seeing like latest events and it's 2014, they're going to be like, okay, this club is dead. So that's, that's just not good. So as we said, know your audience. Think about what your goal is. Is your goal fundraising? Is your goal membership? Is your goal just advocacy? Think about what you're trying to accomplish and then go where those people are. So you do have to think strategically about this. If you're going for the Z Club, you're going to go to a different audience than if you're going for retirees. And if you're going for fundraising, that might be different than membership. So you have to think about what you want and what people you want. And then lastly, build your brand. There's a lot of tools about this on ZI, and I'm gonna get to more in a second, but think about what your brand is and be very conscious of that. A mistake I see some clubs making is really going too out there with things like brands. So Zonta's brand is women and girls. So if you have an event that's focused on, men's testicular awareness, that's a great cause, and I'm all for that cause, but it's going to not work for your brand because people are going to not understand, like, okay, what is Zonta then if you're going about this? And if you want to do something that seems outside of the brand a little, sort of determine, like, can I make a connection here? What is the connection to empowering women and girls? And if you can't figure out a connection, it might not be a good fit because you want people to understand your brand. And the more you go outside of that mission, the more your brand's going to be confusing for other people. So just think about that. And as much as, an event that's for all kids might be great for the community, think to yourself, like, does this have to do with empowering women and girls? Or is this something that like a Kiwanis club would be better suited for, because this doesn't really fit our brand? So build your brand, make sure people in the community, even if they don't want to join Zonta, they know who you are and what your mission is. If at the very least they just go, okay, yeah, Zonta is the one about women, like, that's at least something. It's not a huge brand awareness, but if they can go, okay, Kiwanis is kids and Zonta is women, that's at least something. And then we can build upon that. Okay, so one of the last things I'm going to do is on the Zonta District 9 website, there is even more information. So if you look here, club resources, under documents, we have membership development funding application. I'm not sure what that is, but press kit, PR fundamentals, building credibility and visibility. Oops, I didn't mean to click on that. Training, art of fundraising, 5 keys to membership development, 5 keys worksheet, treasurer's manual. There's all sorts of things here that I think people don't realize exist. So press kit, yet again, we have made this easy for you, that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. It is right here for you to use. So this has information about Zonta International here, education programs, service project history, date, local action. This is something where if someone is like looking to find out more about Zonta International, this would be great literature to give them. And you can also take some of this information and just lift it onto your website or your social media if you need to. PR fundamentals. This is a handy dandy, open. This is a handy dandy document about why a strong story is vital to your Zonta club. Find your niche, stick to the mission. This is good stuff to just read and know that's going to help you. Okay, let's go back. building credibility and visibility. And I also know that these documents are up to date because I updated them last year. So I know that they are up to date. So this is for Cubs on building your credibility and visibility. It talks about, you know, the brand, links to the mission and vision. Is your club keeping the Zonta brand image in? So this is a really good thing to go through. We made it so that it kind of just, it's almost a check sheet that you could take with your club and say, what is your brand image? Is your website modern, professional? So this is sort of coming just step by step. When a visitor comes to your club meeting, what do they see and experience? When a visitor attends, what do they see? What is your club's brand promise? So this is really a step-by-step sort of check sheet that you can use for your club to think, how are we doing in terms of our brand? How has your club advanced our mission in the past year, 2 years, 5 years? So this is sort of questions you can ask yourself. And if you don't know the answer, that's something that your club can work on. And then you can make goals for the future about how to go through this. And then we have some handy dandy, we'll have to update this again once we get the new biennial goals, but a little handy dandy worksheet. Here too, just in case you weren't aware, this is where all of the old district newsletters are kept. You want to click them, as well as the Governor's Summit video, the district and the biennium meeting. So these are all things that you can take and watch, and they're right here on our website. So, you know, I think one of the biggest problems is that people don't know that we have this information available. And we do, and you can use it, and it's free. So just want to make that available. Okay, I talked for a really long time. I'm sorry about that. So again, my name is Becky Gimple. I am the PR and communications chair for this current biennium. This is my personal email address. I don't have one for Zonta because my personal email is basically all Zonta emails anyway, so it doesn't different. So feel free to email me to ask me questions. I like talking about this. So now I wanted to go into any questions. Now, if you have to sign off, I know I wanted to keep this to about an hour, and I know it has been an hour. So if you need to sign off, totally, I get it. I won't be offended, but I do want to stay on for any questions people might have. So go for it.
I'll just make a comment.
Oh, let me open the chat. You know what? I'm going to unshare my screen so I can do that. Let me look at what was in the comment section. Oh, thank you, Beth, for saying Zoom just announced that the free service will be limited to 40 minutes now. Oh, hate that so much. Alice, thank you for the points about brand and staying on brand. This is true for all we do. Totally. So thank you for those comments. Okay, Marva, did you have a question? I'm sorry, I heard you saying something.
Yes, actually, thank you very much. It was very informative, and I really appreciate all the information you shared. But I wanted to add that to remind people not to forget the ethnic newspapers and online periodicals or that may be out there if you're trying to increase your diversity, etc. And also not to forget the online community newspapers that are out there. And oftentimes they include a lot of sports pictures from the high schools. So the kids go on and watch those because they want to see their friends or themselves in the, you know, in online and in the newspaper stuff. So don't forget those options and to check out if you have that.
That's a great point, and that's also sort of what it comes down to, knowing your area. That's sort of something where I think what's important is to say to yourself, like, where do I get my news? Where do my family members get their news? Where do the high schoolers get their news? And just sort of, that's something you could almost pull in the area. You know, before I joined Zonta, I didn't know that Burbank had a newspaper. That was not something that I was aware of. I knew there was the LA Times, but I didn't know that there were specific city newspapers. And that's something that I now know is a huge deal. But I wouldn't have known that if not for Zonta. And so when people were like, oh, let's put this in the Burbank Leader, I was like, what's the Burbank Leader? And I said, hey, all these different towns, I realized Glendale has one. They all have these little newspapers that, you know, still get. So as Marva said, you might not know offhand about the different newspapers in your area. This is something where either you can search online or you can just ask people, and people might not realize, like, we have, for instance, our area has a large Armenian population. So there's likely to be a lot of, Armenian centric, either online newspapers, physical newspapers. And so that's where, we might want to go to our Armenian members and say, like, hey, where do Armenians get their news? What do they go to? So, ask questions and again, find people where they're at. So thank you, Marva. All right. Does anybody have any questions on any specific platforms? Oh, okay. I saw Debbie first.
Well, first I want to thank you, Becky, for doing this today. This would be a great breakout session at the 2023 conference. Just a little ask.
Okay.
An ask. And then I'd like to know the video that you're recording. How do we get a copy of that, or where will that be posted?
Yeah, so if you saw how on the District 9 website, they put the Governor's Summit and the District 9 end of biennium. I know that the biennium is shifting, so you as, incoming governor may have different ideas. I will put this on the YouTube page, which I must confess, I made a mistake about 2 years ago, and I linked the District 9 YouTube page to the Zonta president at zontaburbank.org email. So I linked it to a Zonta Burbank email instead of a district email. So we might have to do stuff with that, but I'll put it on the YouTube page. I can share the link, and then, you can do what you want with it. If you want to put it on the webpage, that's fine. If you don't, so, but yeah, I like to put them on the YouTube so that people don't have to download them. It's a lot easier that way, where it's just readily accessible.
Okay, and then the last comment is D9 does have this Zoom account, and there will be availability for clubs to schedule use of that. We talked about that last night, Governor Britt, and so that will be coming. So
that's perfect. I know our
That's
club at the beginning of the pandemic put money in our budget for a Zoom account, but then I got one through school, so I just used that. And now I believe Kelly is using the one through her work. So, trying to save money in our budget where we can by using things that we already have. So that's a perfect way that clubs can save money, by just using and being able to schedule through the district instead of having to pay for their own. So unless your meetings are under 40 minutes, in which case, go for it. Okay, Nancy.
In Sacramento, we have something called Sacramento 360. That's an online, I don't know, do other communities have that? Where you can list an event like a LunaFest or something.
Oh,
and
yeah.
People can see it. I don't know if that's common or not.
Interesting. So
We
it was
have the patch.
sort of a local kind of newspaper thing. Oh, that's very
It's just online and just events, basically.
That's awesome. I'm looking at it right now and I'm seeing it. I did hear someone say patch. I should have put that on the PowerPoint. That's a really good point. Patch is another one of those sort of neighborhood websites similar to a Nextdoor, which again really depends on the area. So some areas have a very active patch page and some do not. So my mom loves to use Patch. I think it's like her homepage default, so she'll totally see what's going on in Patch, but I know some areas don't use it at all. So if you don't have a patch, if your neighborhood is not active on a patch, it's useless. But I totally love this Sacramento 360. That's really cool. So I'm not sure if they're equivalent in other areas, but yeah, that's something that you can definitely look into. So
And I just want to mention how much I love the Friday advocacy newsletters. And I always get emails back from my senator and representative. So I know that at least somebody in the office is seeing it and the little tick is being checked off.
Yeah, I get so many responses back from the Fast Action Fridays, which is really great that they're, and a lot of times, I mean, it depends on the elected representative, but a lot of times it is tailored. Sometimes you're going to get that just generic, like, Thank you for contacting my office. I care about my constituents, but sometimes I've gotten, especially when it's really specific about women's issues, I've gotten really tailored responses that are, I mean, it's clear that it's going to multiple people, but it's really tailored, and the elected official will talk about like, here's what I've done on women's issues before. Here's how I've voted. Here's what I'm currently working on. And that's really nice to see. And it lets them know that, you know, your area cares about that. And it can be really important because they will tally how many people call or write in about a certain issue because they want to get reelected. So
Right.
it's really important to use the Fast Action Friday. And it's so easy because I will admit I'm really lazy. And if I have to actually write out my own email or letter to an elected official, I'm probably not going to do it unless it's something really important. But with this, I just type in my info and it does it for me. And then I'm like, I just did advocacy. So I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Marva.
I just wanted to say that like the Sacramento 360, actually Burbank has myburbank.com is the online newspaper, and they have a master community calendar. So that's available.
Yeah, and like I know in Burbank as well, there are elected officials who will have their own sort of newsletters, or, you know, different, maybe a real estate agent will have a newsletter, or so you sort of just have to, it's good to just ask and see what's going on in your community. It's going to be different in different communities. You know, more urban areas are going to have differences than more rural areas. So that's one of those things where, you know, it really depends on your community, but it's good to know what's going on there. Like, yeah, as Marva was saying, for my Burbank, they have an entire on their website thing that is just about local organizations. So they have, here's Kiwanis, here's Rotary, and Zonta has its own category that like I didn't really know about until, you know, 2 years ago. And so whenever we have a press release, they tag Zonta. And so that's kind of cool because then if someone hasn't heard about Zonta, they can click on the Zonta tag and see, you know, all of our press releases from, I'm looking here, from 2015. So you know, it's pretty cool in that sense to see like, okay, what's going on? And, you know, that's where the article about Gloria comes up, or our LunaFest comes up. So yeah. All right, Alex.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, you know, you talked about, for you personally, you're not into TikTok and whatnot and Reddit. And I think it's interesting to find that the platforms evolve. So when I first became a member of Facebook, my son, who was like 20 at the time, said, "Mom, you're too old to be on Facebook." And now it's my personal demographic is
Correct.
Facebook.
Yep.
And Instagram too. And so it's like I personally am on Facebook and Instagram. I got a Twitter account that I never look at. But you know, TikTok and again, these platforms evolve, and being on multiple platforms, and you may have covered this. I apologize. I came into the meeting late because my mental clock was off. But being on multiple platforms, because it expands your reach. You know, I know working as a stage manager for shows, I have some cast members that the only way to contact them is through Facebook Messenger. Others have email. Others, you know, I have to call them. So it's so I think you covered probably who's your audience. So you use the platform that's going to best reach them.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's a good thing to know for your own club members too. I mean, we had a club member who didn't have an email address. So when we needed to contact her, you know, it was either phone or snail mail. So I would print out, you know, like the district newsletter, I would print it out and I would mail it to her so that she knew what was going on. But like, you know, if we didn't call her, mail her, like she wasn't going to know anything. So it's good to know what people are on, what people use, what people are comfortable with, and come to them where they're at. Because everybody's going to be at a different place. And you're totally right about the evolution of Facebook. You know, I use Facebook primarily now. I never really post on my personal page, except I think I post about LunaFest or something, but I never post personal stuff. And I use it more just to know what's going on, because that's where, you know, the people in my town, the groups will post. So I look almost more at the pages than I do at people. I'll be like, okay, what's Kiwanis doing? What's this group doing? And that's how I keep up to date with what's going on. But I don't use it as much as like a person to person kind of a thing. So, you know, it depends on how people are using it. And it's good for that, but some people are not going to have a Facebook page. So no matter what you put on Facebook, it's not going to help. And that's not how you're going to reach those people. So yeah, Beth.
Santa Clarita has a nonprofits like events Facebook page. So that's always something to have to remember, is to let them know that if we have something coming up, they'll broadcast it out to their followers. And those are,
Yeah.
you know, like you said, with the volunteer match, the people who follow that page are the doers. They're the
Right.
people looking for something to do. So
Right.
that's always something we have to keep in mind is.
Right. And that's knowing your audience, that the people who don't want to volunteer, like no matter what you put in front of them, they're not going to do it. You can't change their minds. You want to go to the people who are actively looking for volunteer opportunities. But what you said also reminds me, this is really a good point also about collaboration, is that if you know people in your community in other clubs or other organizations, you know, ask the person in Rotary, what do they do? What does the Lions Club do? What does the local high school PTA do? You know, like how do they get their message across? And they might have ideas that you didn't know of. You know, if you're not aware of that Facebook page, like in Santa Clarita, and you're not posting on it, you're going to miss out on a big audience, and maybe another local club knows about it. So it's good to really be in touch with the other clubs and organizations in your community and know how they're getting their message across. So yeah. All right. Does anybody have any other questions? I appreciate you staying on because I know it is Saturday.
Thank you, Becky.
All right. Thank you all so much for joining.
Great
I
job.
appreciate it. If you are watching this recorded, thank you for watching it recorded. And as I mentioned, feel free to ask me any questions. My email is BECKYGIMPLE@gmail.com. I know that in the coming biennium, there will be a new PR person, so you could also probably ask that person questions as well. And yeah, thank you all so much, and just get your Santa message out there. So thank you. Have a good day, everybody.